Thank you very much. And by the way, if you happen to be here for Helen Hamilton, because I know she's usually here the first Wednesday of the month, she couldn't make it today for some reason, so I'm here instead. And my name is Regina. But it's good to see you all. As you know, what we do during this time is we look at quotes by masters that have been collected in a book called The 7 Steps to Awakening. Right now, we're looking at some quotes by Nisargadatta Maharaj. And then we look at my journal and how I contemplated those quotes. And right now, we're in about 2012 in that journal. But I actually finished that journal in, it was either late March or early April of 2020. So I kept that journal for like 8.5 years. And so what happens as a result is you see a lot of change, a lot of insight, a lot of clarity, sometimes some confusion. You see all of that in the journal. It's kind of like the opportunity to look at someone else's awakening and see what they went through. However, I will tell you that one of the things I listen to each week is a recording of the early insights. Some of y'all listen to my early teachings and you get together and you discuss some of the early insights. And I got to tell you, that's a pretty nice record too of somebody's awakening and what they went through. So really, it's kind of like there's 2 parts to it. The RDA early teachings playlist on YouTube is really the purification phase. Some people go through awakening and then go through purification. I went through purification and then through awakening. I did it, well, depending on where you define awakening. That's a fuzzy line. The way some people define awakening, I actually woke up before my purification period. Isn't that funny? Depends on exactly how you define it. But the way that I look at it, I went through the purification period first. In other words, I had no sense of who I was in truth as I was going through the purification period. And so that's really what the early teachings playlist, the RDA early teachings playlist, is, that purification. And then the first sense of the truth of what I am came in about April of 2008, which was after the purification phase had ended. And then there was just a deepening in that. And that's really what you find in the journal. So it's kind of like 2 different phases of the awakening process, both recorded. And I said almost all of that for the people who are in the room that I've never seen before. The rest of y'all already knew all that stuff, right? So today, by the way, everybody's saying happy birthday. I appreciate that. I did contemplate, because, today I am 63. So I contemplated what is really 63, and the only thing that I could come up with that is really 63 years old today was a birth certificate that I have upstairs in my safe. So let's all say happy birthday to my birth certificate, because it is 63 years old today. It's the only thing I could come up with, but that's a pretty old piece of paper. That's kind of cool. Yeah. So, and I have it upstairs. All right. So, we're looking at quote number 290 then, in the 7 Steps to Awakening. Again, this is Nisargadatta Maharaj. Here's what Nisargadatta said. Stop attributing names and shapes to the essentially nameless and formless. Realize that every mode of perception is subjective, that what is seen or heard, touched or smelt, felt or thought, expected or imagined is in the mind and not in reality. And you will experience peace and freedom from fear. I'll read that again. Now that we know, if we listen to the rest of the quote, we can experience peace and freedom from fear. Maybe that'll make the quote a little more interesting, huh? So here's the quote again. Stop attributing names and shapes to the essentially nameless and formless. Realize that every mode of perception is subjective, that what is seen or heard, touched or smelt, felt or thought, expected or imagined is in the mind and not in reality. And you will experience peace and freedom from fear. So I think we talked a little bit about this last week in a way. Last week, I remember saying, if we can just accept that anytime that we are suffering, it's because of a thought in the mind, right? We can transcend suffering completely. And that's exactly what this is saying. I also remember I told you all some weeks ago that, I hear some people say, like after a wake, anger still happens and, all these other things still happen. And I told you that in my experience, just talking about my experience is it's a little different. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. I'm not saying that something might not happen that might not make me angry for a moment, or maybe something severe would happen and make me angry for longer than a moment. What I am saying is, my experience is anger doesn't just happen. That whenever anger happens, it is because I am attached to an idea, or I am attached to a role, or I am attached to something. In other words, I have attributed a name or a shape or a value or something to something. And then as a result of it, of whatever happened, I got angry. I would love to remember the last time I got angry in a genuine and sincere way so I could talk about it. If anybody here knows, remind me, because I'm having trouble with that. Because I don't want to, I prefer not to make up stories, but it's hard for me now because I really don't have as many of these experiences as I once did. This is what's great about the RDA early teaching playlist. That's still when I was in all the crap, right? So you hear all the real stories that was going on. Now it's much harder for me to come up with them. So I'm going to talk about somebody else. Since I literally can't remember the last time I was angry, I'll talk about somebody else who has been angry a lot lately. We are building a house. And if anyone has ever built a house, you must know things don't always go as planned. Right? They just don't. If you build a house and everything went as planned, my God, that must have been like 1 out of 10 million. I don't know. So what happens is we walk into the house, to look at what they have done lately, and something will not be as planned. Almost always my immediate thought is, oh, that's fine. Like, okay, we're going to do it that way instead. Like, that's my immediate feeling. My partner is completely different. My partner gets so upset because it isn't what we asked for, right? And he gets so incredibly upset. In fact, he's been angrier in this process than I've seen him in 20, 25 years. So, I've really been watching him and why is he getting so upset when this isn't his current nature? And, and what I can see going on for him are a couple of different things. One is, he's a very important man in his job, a very important man, has thousands of employees, and they're all engineers. And they run everything by him before anything is built, right? Every single plan, every little detail of the plan is approved by him before anything is built. So he's used to having that kind of control. In this case, he doesn't have that kind of control because although there are house plans, not every little detail is on the house plan. Like there isn't a plan for exactly where the knob on the cabinet is going to go, as an example, right? That's not in the house plans. So sometimes the builder just trying to, do his job, he just does things. And those things may be what we expected. They may not be what we expected. So the fact that he isn't the approving authority of everything before it happens, I think is really hard for him, because is what he's accustomed to. But also, he's paying a lot of money for this house, right? I mean, he's paying cash for this house. He's paying a lot of money for this house, right? And so he wants everything to be perfect according to his idea of perfect. So it's attachment to all of these ideas. It's attachment to wanting everything to be the way he wants it. No surprises, nothing unexpected, right? This is why he's getting angry. Anger isn't just happening, is my point. Right? And the reason I'm not getting angry is because I don't have any of that. So I walk in and sure, it wasn't what I expected either. Don't get me wrong. I had kind of imagined something different too, often the same thing he had imagined. But I look at it and my thought is, okay, then that's how it's going to be. Right? Like there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not what I expected. I mean, it's not like it's wrong. It's just different. So this is what I find. I find that whenever we have these strong emotions that really are not in alignment with our true self, there is some type of attachment here. It's not just happening. And so what I have learned is that when something comes up for me, and again, I'm not saying nothing ever does come up. When something comes up for me, I can look. To me, the faster you look, the better, because whatever you're attached to, the second you're getting angry, it's right there. The second you're feeling guilty, it's right there. The second you're feeling jealous, it's right there. I mean, it's right there right now, right? And so I can look right now and see what I'm attached to. I can see it. And sometimes it's stuff that can be easily let go. They're like the second you see it, you see the folly or the foolishness in it genuinely, and you can let it go, and there's a quick return to peace. Sometimes it's something much, much deeper. You know, like I do know one thing that is not gone for me. That is still what I call the subconscious, because it's not intellectual. And so it can't be let go intellectually. If it could be, I would have already done it. It's the subconscious attachment to the body. You know, how do I know that subconscious attachment to the body is there? Well, as I've told you all, that sometimes I'm in situations because of where I live, where, you know, there are wild animals about, or poisonous snakes about, or whatever. And I can feel within me the fear, the desire to avoid. I can feel all that normal human reaction that I know is actually the subconscious attachment to the body. And so what I do, since I know that that is still there, is I just keep putting my attention on it, and I recognize it for what it is, because so many things have already been let go with that same process. It's the same process. You know, for example, one of the things that you all know the story of is when I let go of the I am bad belief, which some of you may, if you don't know my language, would be like shame, guilt, unworthiness, inherently flawed, right? I let go of that. And the way that I let go of that is by every time it came up, I recognize that's the problem. The final experience for me was when the belief in rejection came up in the situation with Laurent. That was the final thing. And what happened is whenever my mind wanted to blame him, you know, he, I didn't go there. I said, no, it's not him. It's my own belief and my own rejectability that is causing my pain. I just kept my eye on, kept my awareness on what was the actual cause of suffering. And then through doing that, just through keeping awareness on the actual cause of suffering, it miraculously healed. It's not like I healed it. It's not like I actually even let it go. You can't let go of something subconscious. I mean, you can't, right? You can let go of a conscious idea. Like if you realize that you are annoyed with a noise, you can actually decide not to be annoyed with the noise. That's a conscious idea. You can literally make that decision. Never mind, I'm going to allow this, and you'll be fine. But these more deeply rooted things, like, shame and lack and attachment to the body and the belief that the truth is not true, none of these are conscious. You can't decide to let them go. But you keep placing your awareness on them and recognize them as the cause of the problem, instead of projecting it out and blaming that person or that situation. I can't even blame that bear. And I know many of y'all don't have bears in your everyday possibility existence, but I do. And I can't blame that bear for my fear. Sure, the bear is there. And sure, there's the possibility that I may run into that bear, but that's not why I'm afraid. I'm afraid because of the subconscious attachment to the body. And I just keep my attention there. This is why I'm afraid. This is why I'm afraid. Because this is how everything else has healed. Right? This is how everything else has healed. So again, Nisargadatta is saying, stop attributing names and shapes to the essentially nameless and formless, but he doesn't really just mean words. It's not that a word is a problem. It's that we don't just attribute the name bear. We attribute all kinds of ideas about bear, all kinds of ideas about rattlesnake, all kinds of ideas about mountain lion. We know so much, and we're sure we're right about all of that. And we also have so many ideas about I, right? And all of these ideas are colliding. Bear and I are colliding and creating my fear. What I say I am, what I say bear is, right? This is what's creating my fear. So if I stop attributing names and shapes, or really ideas and attachments and I know and all of that stuff, if I stop attributing all of that stuff, I'll experience peace and freedom from fear. Right? And notice he's saying that all this stuff is subjective. That means, in this case, the word subjective means all of that stuff is verifying for you over and over and over again that I am an I. That's what subjective means, a subject. I am a subject. I am this, and everything else is not me. That's what subjective means. And so as I go around with my names on everything, and not only my names about it, but my ideas about it, and my attachments about it, and my desires about it, and my fears about it, and I keep putting that on everything else, I am reinforcing I as this separate, basically alone, vulnerable thing. And if I am this separate, alone, vulnerable thing, wouldn't you think that fear and suffering has to be a part of the experience? I mean, gosh, if I'm alone, I need you to love me. And if you don't, if you all start leaving the room one by one because you're sick of listening to me talk, by the way, feel free to leave the room. I'm just talking now. But if you all start leaving the room one by one, what happens in here? Because I needed you to love me. You see? It's not the fact that you left the room. My God, maybe somebody rang your doorbell. Might have had nothing to do with me. It's not the fact that you left that's causing my pain. It's that I'm attached to needing your approval. That's what's causing my pain, not you leaving. My attachment to your approval. So again, Nisargadatta is saying, stop attributing names and shapes to the essentially nameless and formless. Realize that every mode of perception is subjective, that what is seen or heard, touched or smelt, felt or thought, expected or imagined, is in the mind and not in reality. And you will experience peace and freedom from fear. So I'm going to look at how I contemplated this. Now, keep in mind that right now we're looking at my journal from 2012, but this is what I wrote in Out of the Stillness. while the body moves and acts, there can be ongoing remembrance in the mind. Remember that what is perceived is a dream. Remember there is only one essence. Remember that whatever you seem to see or interact with is only that one essence. Remember that what is perceived cannot be meaningful or important because it isn't reality. With the tranquility of remembrance, let interaction happen, but remain focused on remembrance. So some of y'all have taken 500 days with NTI, or you are taking 500 days with NTI. I heard y'all in the last recording talking about the term I use for some of the exercises you do in that curriculum called walkabouts, right? A walkabout is an exercise that goes with you to work, right? Goes with you to the family gathering, goes with you, right? You don't have to be sitting in contemplation for a walkabout, right? It goes with you wherever you go. This is a walkabout, remembrance. This is a walkabout. Notice it starts off while the body moves and acts, right there. That's proof that this is a walkabout. This is not an exercise that you do while you're sitting in your chair in meditation or contemplation. This is an exercise or a practice that you do when you get up and walk away, right? So while the body moves and acts, there can be ongoing remembrance in the mind. Now it says, remember that what is perceived is a dream. Now it's kind of funny that I wrote that. And I'm okay with the fact that I wrote that. But one of the things that never felt super sincere for me, and therefore didn't work as a practice for me, because anything you practice has to feel sincere for you. If it doesn't feel sincere, it doesn't have a whole lot of juice behind it, right? So one of the things that never felt sincere for me was saying stuff like, oh, that's a dream, or that's not real, or that didn't happen. None of that felt sincere for me. So how would I practice then? Remember that what is perceived is a dream. How would I practice that in my case when that never felt sincere? It never felt genuine. The way that I practiced that was first, and you'll find this somewhere in my journal. First, I looked at what is the same in the world and in a dream. Therefore, I cannot verify that the world is not a dream. And some of the stuff was easy to come up with, like with a dream, you're just kind of plopped in the middle of it. You don't remember a beginning to the dream, right? Nobody ever remember. You can remember when a movie starts, but do you ever remember when a dream starts? Like, it doesn't have a start, right? And the only end might be that you wake up. But if you didn't wake up, you can't even remember the end of a dream, right? Like if you wake up the next morning and you say, I had a dream last night, do you really remember the end of that dream? Right? So isn't that the way the world is? Like, do you remember, like today's my birthday. Do I remember the beginning of this lifetime? No. So I could see that was the same, that you just kind of plopped in the middle of it, right? You don't really recall a beginning or an ending. Another thing that I can see is the same between a dream and this world is that a dream, I intellectually know that a dream is all in the mind, right? We all know that. That's not happening, right? That's just in the mind. But when I'm in the dream, I think I'm I, and I think everything else in that dream is not I. I mean, that's the way I see it. Well, that's the way it appears here too. So there's no difference there. This is so friggin' weird, but I'm going to tell you this. One of the things I was contemplating, again, this was in 2012, when I was contemplating, is the world more like a dream or more like a not dream? Therefore, it could be reality. One of the things I contemplated was strange stuff happens in a dream. Like in a dream, I can fly. I can't fly here, right? And so, and I remember, let me back up just about a week before. There was a dime sitting on a table upstairs. It doesn't matter to me at all. I'll often have a piece of change sitting around. I don't even bother to pick it up and put it on my purse, in my purse, right? But there's this dime sitting on this table upstairs. I just happened to notice it. And then I happened, or it might have been a penny. I don't remember exactly. But then I happened to notice, like a little later, I walked by and it was gone. And I asked, did anybody take this dime? Not that I cared, but I was just curious, where'd this dime go? And nobody here knew anything about the dime. And then I forgot about it. Well, my contemplation area is in the basement, just like at the retreat house. It's in the basement. This dime was on a table upstairs. This is a true story. I got to tell you that because it doesn't sound true, but this is a true story. I am sitting downstairs in my chair, in my contemplation area, contemplating whether a dream and life is more alike, or a dream and what we call life is not more alike. Therefore, life might be more real than a dream. I'm sitting there contemplating that, and I'm literally thinking about, well, strange things happen in dreams, like I can fly. I'm sitting there thinking about that, and I hear this plop, fall from this plop. Can you guys guess what fell onto my chair? The dime. In the moment that I'm contemplating that, well, then I have to say, okay, I can't say weird stuff doesn't happen here. I mean, I just can't, because that's weird, right? That's weird that the dime that disappeared a week ago just fell out of nowhere onto my chair, right? And then I started thinking about other things that had happened. Like by this point, I'd already had the experience of being the apple. My broken toe had spontaneously healed. I mean, there were other things too that I had to admit, that's not different than a dream. And just the only thing that I could come up with that makes this seem more, and this is at that time, now I would probably have some other stuff to say, but that makes this seem more real than a dream is that it's longer, right? It's longer, it's more consistent, right? I wake up into the same thing every day. But what that did was that created enough, I don't actually know. Like, I really don't know. That I could then begin to contemplate the world as at least maybe not real. Right? I mean, at least, and so that opened that up. So the way I got to where I could contemplate that the world that is perceived as a dream, or at least possibly a dream, is first, I spent a lot of time contemplating the qualities of a dream and literally comparing them to the qualities of this experience and finding out that they were truly more alike than different. So while the body moves and acts, there can be an ongoing remembrance in the mind. Remember that what is perceived as a dream. Okay, so what? So what? Well, the next thing in this for me then was, what does that really mean? That this might be more like a dream than not like a dream. What does that really mean? Well, what that meant to me, what came up for me when I asked that question, is that really means I don't need to be quite so attached to all this. I don't need to take all of this super seriously, right? I just don't need to. And so this allowed me to start detaching in certain areas where I might have previously been more attached. I don't need to be attached there. Right? I can let this happen. I can let this thing go wrong. If I interpret it as wrong, I can let this thing go wrong and I'm still okay. I don't need to control this situation. It's okay to still find out what's going to happen. It allowed me to start taking my hands off the wheel, right? So remember that what is perceived is a dream. Now, the next step, remember there is only one essence. This, this was super enjoyable for me. I would, when I had time, because as everybody knows, I was, well, actually, I wasn't even, Awakening Together didn't exist yet, but in that year, I was spending a lot of time in contemplation. But I mean, even after that year, when Awakening Together started and I was super busy as president minister, there was always time each day, usually when walking the dog, because I had to walk the dog every day, that I would spend time looking at things, just looking at whatever was there, a bug, the grass, a cloud, the wind, which you can't even see, but it's there, just whatever was there, and just contemplating that it was all one essence. Not thinking about it, just contemplating it, right? And in case anybody doesn't know what that means, contemplating, it meant lingering with and being with the idea. Just kind of hanging out with that idea, right? Just lingering with and being with the idea. I found this to be extremely enjoyable because the more I contemplated everything as one essence, the more the one essence began to show itself to me. In fact, we were out at the house last week one evening, and I can't remember what my partner and the builder were discussing. I can't remember, but I know we were discussing where the front sidewalk is going to go. And there was a bunch of leftover wood and stuff that people had, that workers had left laying in the yard. And in order to paint, they wanted to paint where the sidewalk was going to go. My partner and the builder were moving all this wood and stuff to get it out of the way. And as they were moving the wood, there were bugs that had been hanging out underneath the wood that started scattering. I know they thought I was crazy because I was standing there talking to the bugs. I was like, oh my gosh, that's so scary, isn't it? And I'm totally into these bugs. I'm so absorbed with these bugs because I see the one essence now. Because that connection is there, right? It's wonderful. This is one of the joys of awakening, is seeing the one essence everywhere. So taking time each day to really just contemplate, letting the eyes land on what's ever there, but contemplating there's only one essence is one of the great joys. Remember that whatever you seem to see or interact with is only that one essence. Now, can you guys guess what I had the most trouble with contemplating that it was only one essence? Anybody want to guess? Other humans. It was much easier to see the one essence in a cockroach. Why? Because cockroaches don't show up with a different opinion than yours. They don't show up with different ideas than yours. They don't show up with a different will than yours. So I would say when I became somewhat advanced at contemplating the wind and the trees and the bugs and the flowers and all that as one essence, I then needed to start bringing that into the human world. And I needed to learn when I was like in a business meeting and people are in a discussion and they're exercising their different point of views. I needed to learn to allow all that, right? And still play my role. But at the same time, I would look at them and when I could without making anybody nervous in the eyes. But, I was always trying to be somewhat stealth in this. I didn't want to make people, feel weird. But look at them and notice, just remember that what's behind that mind, behind that different opinion, right, is the same essence as me. And just keep contemplating that same essence as me. And do you know what began to happen? I began to spontaneously say hello to strangers, not just saying hello to strangers, because I've to some degree always done that, but with the sense of sameness, where it was as if that person was a genuine good friend when I didn't know them and I would never see them again. It's that same sense that had me talking to the bugs last week when they were moving the wood. I began to feel that kinship with people. And in fact, I remember there's, we have a few scary looking people around here. In fact, I think Pueblo has the reputation for having the most crime of any city in Colorado. So we have some scary looking people, they look like gang members, that's what they look like. I started noticing myself responding to them as kinship, K-I-Ns, as kins, before my mind noticed the gang member appearance. And you know what else? They responded right back. It was amazing. Like if I had had time to think about it first, I might have been scared of this person. Tattoos all up the neck, all over the face, rough looking, right? But I it's like I forgot to go to the mind first for who this person was. Instead, just this was happening first. This was happening faster. So as crazy as it sounds, I began to enjoy people as much as insects. But I will confess the people there was a bigger challenge. It was like a step up on the remember one essence practice, right? It was a step up. So remember, there is only one essence. Remember that whatever you seem to see or interact with, whatever means even the gang member, right? Remember that whatever you seem to see or interact with is only that one essence. Remember that what is perceived cannot be meaningful or important because it isn't reality. We already talked about this, but we'll come back to it again. So that means when I'm in the business meeting and there's a difference of opinion here, the way I think it should go can't be that important. When the contractor is building the house and I walk into the kitchen and I see something I didn't expect, it can't be that important. Now, don't get me wrong. There are a couple of things that did have to be corrected. Like they put the microwave so high I couldn't reach it. That had to be corrected. I said I can't live with a microwave I can't reach. But I didn't get angry. There are some things that have to be corrected, is the point though that I want to make. But there were a lot of things that didn't have to be corrected. They just weren't what I expected, right? Why should my expectation be that important? You see? I mean, this is fine. I mean, sure, I didn't expect it to look that way, but that looks fine. It's just different than what I imagined, right? I mean, how important is it? So I began to take myself lightly. Take my expectations. It's not like expectations disappear. I still imagine. I mean, today what they're doing is they're putting the handles and all that on the cabinets. I still imagine, like I have some cup handles. I imagine them right in the middle of the drawer, the cup handles. But what if I walk in and they put them at the top? I'll be like, oh, that's not how I imagined it. But can I still open the drawer? Yep. Right? Is it worth getting upset about? Nope. Do I even want to get upset about it? Nope. But I know somebody else in this house that might get very upset if they're not in the middle of the drawer. Right? Very upset, to the point where he might want all new cabinets and want them to pay for it. So learning to take ourselves lightly makes everything lighter. Why is my way of imagining it, or my point of view on how this should go, or what I think about this, that important? Now, again, I have to be able to reach the microwave. That's pretty practical, right? But how many things do we give importance to that actually aren't important? Maybe somebody else's way of doing it is just as good. So remember that what is perceived cannot be meaningful or important because it isn't reality. With the tranquility of remembrance, let interaction happen, but remain focused on remembrance, which means this is kind of like, the word that's coming to mind. This is kind of like a concentration that I'm carrying around with me as the body moves and acts. I'm kind of contemplating, concentrating, remembering, okay, this is a dream, in whatever way that feels sincere for you. Like I said, I had to really contemplate that before I could do that sincerely. But this is a dream. There is only one essence. That is that 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 one essence. And what I think is important, what I give great value to, it's really not that important, because this is not reality, right? Carrying that with you throughout the day, throughout the workday, throughout the family. Some people like Thanksgiving or Christmas is their big deal, right? Family, throughout those family gatherings, right? Whatever it is that you face. So I'll just read this one more time. While the body moves and acts, there can be ongoing remembrance in the mind. Remember that what is perceived is a dream. Remember there is only one essence. Remember that whatever you seem to see or interact with is only that one essence. Remember that what is perceived cannot be meaningful or important because it isn't reality. With the tranquility of remembrance, let interaction happen, but remain focused on remembrance. That's number 290. So do I feel a kinship with bears yet? No. I mean, yes. Yes and no. Yes, I love bears. Bears are actually my favorite animal. I think I told you guys this like last week, I probably spend 10 minutes a day watching bear videos. I told somebody that. I mean, I love bears. I have, like right here in my bedroom, I have, oh, can you see him? I have a bear. But here's where the fear sometimes comes in. I have a condo in La Vida, and I have a dog. And sometimes in the middle of the night, my dog has to go to the bathroom, 3:30 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. And it's dark out there. And I know that there are bears out there. I know there are bears out there because I see bears on Facebook every day that somebody saw in their yard in La Vida last night. Okay, so I know there are bears out there. And in fact, I'm sure George and Shauna have told you, last Friday at the condos, a very large bear flipped over our dumpster. Now, the dog park where I take my dog is directly behind the dumpster. So when I go out there at 3:30 in the morning, sometimes, not every day, but sometimes I get a little nervous. And I'll tell you when. Every now and then we'll be walking out to the dog park and my dog will alert. And I think, shit, there's something here. Now, it could be a cat. It could be a kitty cat. It could be a deer. It could be, but there's something here and we're in the dark. And one of the things that's around here are bears. So yeah, I get a little nervous. I get a little nervous. So that nervousness still arises. Again, many nights I go to the dog park and there's no nervousness. It's not like I'm scared to go out to the dog park, because we do that all the time. But when she alerts or when I hear a noise, you can just feel the fear rush up in that moment, right? So as a result of that, I know that subconscious attachment to the body is still there. And it didn't help that a big giant bear literally turned over our dumpster last week, But what I am aware of, okay, so this is the practice that goes on in my mind. It's remembrance. What I am aware of is that bear is the one essence with me, that this fear is coming from still that subconscious attachment to the body, and that I don't know what will happen even if I meet a bear in the dark. The truth is, I have walked up on bears before in La Vida. And you know what's happened every other time thus far? They've hauled ass, right? They were more afraid of me. But there are occasionally that doesn't happen. Occasionally it goes the other way. I saw a video the other night of a guy in La Vida who was walking out of his workplace. He was leaving. It was after dark, but he was leaving his workplace and he had taken the trash, put it in the back of his pickup because he was going to go dump it somewhere. And then he remembered something. He went back inside. And when he came back out, he ran into a bear who had in that length of time gotten into the back of his pickup and gotten the trash. And the bear was walking off with the bag of trash in his mouth. But when he came out the door, and the bear was only, probably 6 feet from the door when he walked out it. When he came out the door and the bear saw him, the bear dropped the trash and ran. Right? So, I know all this. I know all this. I know I don't know what would happen even if I met a bear at night. So all of this I'm always looking at. But if you were to ask me, Regina, is there no more fear about the body? I'd have to say, oh no, it's there. I know it's there. I've also felt it in the car with certain drivers. Bears, mountain lions, drivers, these are the things that bring it up, right? But I also know what it is. And so I just keep my attention with it. And do I know when it will snap, when it will break, when it will, my experience of all of these other things that have been, I say healed, right? That's just a word I picked up when I was a Course in Miracles student. My experience of all these other things, what really feels like happen is like they break. Like there's some kind of a connection in you that allows you to believe that you're not as good as others, right? And then somehow at some point that connection breaks. And when it breaks, you can't feel that way anymore, right? It's like it gets broken. It's like it snaps. And so someday this will snap too. It just hasn't snapped yet. Right? And so I just keep realizing this is what this is. This is the subconscious attachment to the body. Right? And I've also looked at, I've looked at, is this the fear of death? And I wouldn't really say it's the fear of death. And I'll tell you why, because there have been times before, like there was the thought that maybe this body had cancer, and then it turned out it didn't. But, the doctors had to investigate a little deeper and that kind of thing. There was no fear around those situations. There was no fear around that. I think the fear shows up at the thought of something sudden. It seems to be more around the suddenness of like a car wreck, a bear attack. And you know what else that sounds like to me? The suddenness of the final death of the ego. Is it possible that it's all one fear? And it's just getting projected onto the bear, projected onto the car, projected onto the body. But what it really is that I'm going to call it that last and that deepest fear. The final death of the ego just showing up in these different ways. I've contemplated that as the possibility of what I'm actually looking at. Yeah. But who knows? This whole journey forward, it's so easy to talk about what we've already transcended. It's easy to talk about what's in the rearview mirror, because by then you have some understanding. It's not as easy to talk about what you're currently moving through, or you certainly have no idea about what's ahead. You can't talk about that. And if you do, you're just talking in your imagination, right? But yeah, I will be honest with you. I would prefer not to meet George's big bear by the dumpster when I take Ellie out in the middle of the night to pee. That's still where I'm at. But I do have a nice flashlight. That helps. I can see a little better with the flashlight. So we have 9 minutes. Let's go ahead and jump ahead to 291. It looks short. I love this one. You cannot be rid of problems without abandoning illusions. all your thoughts about this stuff. You cannot be rid of problems without abandoning illusions. Let's imagine that somehow we figured out how to keep bears out of Fort Condo. We're never going to do this, but imagine we build almost like a cage around Fort Condo. It even has a top to it, right? And we have a gate that opens when you push a little remote on your car so you can drive in, and closes behind you. And there's no way bears can get inside Fort Condos. And I am totally safe taking my dog to the dog park. It doesn't matter when. Let's pretend we do that. What this is saying is that's not solving the problem, because the problem never was the bear, right? The problem is the attachment to the body in this particular case, or whatever, it could be the problem is the belief that you're not good enough, right? What I call the I am. The problem is the belief in lack. The problem is, right? And so even if you solve the problem, apparently in one area of your life, it's just going to pop up somewhere else. It's like that game. What's that mole game where you try to hit the mole and it pops up in another hole, right? Whack-a-mole, that's it, whack-a-mole. It's a whack-a-mole game. So even if we did create a way to keep bears out of my own backyard, this is just going to show up somewhere else, as long as the unconscious attachment to the body is still here, because that's the real problem. And this is why I've told people before that whenever you blame something outside of you for your upset, you are passing on healing. Because the way that we heal, or the way these things break inside of us, is by keeping our awareness with the truth. And the truth is, she just called me, whatever. She just said I was the ugliest bitch she's ever known, right? But I'm not really upset because of her words. I'm not really upset because of her attitude. I'm upset because I believe this is true about me. My problem is my own belief that I'm ugly, that I'm mean, that I'm unlovable, right? You don't blame her for calling you an ugly bitch. You realize what's real. The reason I'm hurt by it is because of what I have in here. You keep your eye on the truth. That's the truth. The truth is I am hurt because of what I believe in here about me. And again, awareness is amazing, because awareness is God, to pick another word. I mean, sure, some people say, but it's just my awareness. Well, that's God, irrelevant, right? To put your awareness on something over and over and over and over again with honesty and with sincerity, it's almost like it melts. Imagine an ice cube melting. And then one day it's gone. But if I blame her and I talk bad about her for calling me an ugly bitch and I blah, 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 I'm not putting my awareness on the truth. I'm being deceived. I'm allowing myself to be deceived that the problem is out there. Fixing the problem, fire her ass, get her out of here, right? That's just like putting a big cage around Fort Condos. Whack-a-mole is going to pop up somewhere else. So you cannot be rid of problems without abandoning illusions. And the illusions are always in my mind. Always, 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 always in my mind. That's what the previous quote told us, right? The previous quote said, realize that every mode of perception is subjective, that what is seen or heard, touched or smelt, felt or thought, expected or imagined is in the mind. It's always, always, always in the mind. The problem is always, always, always in the mind. Maybe conscious mind, maybe subconscious mind, but always in the mind. So I need to turn my divine awareness, which is really just my everyday attention, to the mind. And I need to identify the problem. And I need to just say, that's it. That's all I got to do. That's it. That's what's causing this. That's all you got to do. You're just sticking with the truth of the matter. You just stick with the truth. And then let's look at what I wrote for number 291. Problems are caused by giving meaning and importance to that which is perceived. Remembering that that which is perceived isn't real removes the false perception of problems. So that's cute. That's sweet. But again, it never worked for me. I hear people say stuff like, that didn't really happen. Like, it's almost like saying she didn't really call me an ugly bitch. My mind's like, yes, she did. Yes, she did. So how do I see that that's not real? Well, part of how I would see that that's not real is first by going in and looking at what was really upset in me. But it never has taken, once I see what I'm upset, that really I'm upset because I have these lowly feelings about myself. It doesn't take much to turn it around then and realize that's why she called me an ugly bitch. She feels the same way I do. She was acting out on me for some reason, but I had said something prior to that or did something prior to that that triggered in her own belief that she was not good enough. And if my belief that I'm not good enough is just a belief, her belief that she's not good enough is just a belief too. That then makes that entire surface interaction meaningless. What's really going on here is my sister and I have the same problem. And what I need to do is focus on seeing that that is not true, right? That's what I mean. That's what I mean when I say something isn't real. It doesn't mean she didn't call me an ugly bitch. It just means the surface was just the symptom and it's nothing. We have to get down to what the real problem is and then realize the real problem is not true. It's not true. It's not true about me. It's not true about her. And this is what has to be learned, is that this is not true. This is where I need to keep my attention. This is where I need to keep my sincerity. And I'll tell you what, I'll never get there if I say, I'm not really a bitch, but she is. You see? Because the belief stays. The belief that someone can be less than someone else is still in place. And it's the belief that needs to be seen as not true. It's all one essence. And with that, we are out of time. So y'all have a wonderful week. I'll see you again next week, okay? Bye.